jobs. That was a big discovery. But, you know, they also wear pants and sweaters and ties and things. And so we're taking great artistic license. So how memories work and how the geography of the mind is set up in our movie is inspired by the research, but not sort of tied down. I guess at worst case is we just don't want the scientists in the world to roll their eyes when they see the film. Because they go, okay, they did their homework, and there's some truth to that.
I mean, watching John Lasseter loves doing research. He'll do research for months. And it's amazing with John, especially, he, like everything that you touch upon is like in his brain forever. And he can call it out at any moment.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I challenge you to talk about, like, you know, theater chair design. He'll be like, oh yeah, I saw an exhibit once on theater chair design, and da 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 da. Once we were, it was on Monsters University, we were talking about a crew jacket, which was going to be kind of a Letterman's jacket style. He's like, you want to make sure you get the stitching right. I had one in high school. Let me show you. And he showed us the stitching on the Letterman's jacket. So everything in the world is relevant to what we do, and that's pretty cool. You never know where that stuff will help you out of the line.
This is more directed towards Jonas, obviously.
Yes.
But do you have any sort of wisdom for someone who's hoping to go down the production track in development?
Do I have wisdom? I mean, listen, what I know is Pixar. I mean, I love you even asking that question because I was the one guy in school when I was like in film theory, and they said, how many people want to direct? The entire class raised their hand except for me. You know? And I don't know why that is. I've always wanted to put on the show as opposed to kind of be the show. So I thrive on figuring out, and I love movies so much. I love animation so much, and I'm proud of the fact that I found a way to be helpful. I guess my wisdom is be passionate and as knowledgeable as any director or writer or actor or animator. But know that your job is to protect those ideas. And I think what I do for you, is that I can channel the audience a little bit. So I can pull myself out of the analytics of it. And I often say things like, okay, here where you're going, that makes sense. I don't know if my mom would understand that. Think about what's our neighbors are they gonna see this or that? And I try to at least cue the creative that way. So I'm not creative, but I found creative ways to help drive it. So I guess my advice is learn about putting on anything. I played in a rock band when I was in school, when I was in high school and college. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to play guitar and whatnot. And I realized now, looking back on it, I learned more about making films almost there anywhere else because I was dealing with artists that, you know, were fragile and had egos and had opinions, and I was dealing with crazy club owners that were friends with Hell's Angels, and I mean, it was just nuts, but it was all in service of putting on a show, rehearsing and putting on a show. And so I found sort of some connective tissue to things I'd done in the past. So everything I did was about putting something on, you know. If that helps out. Yeah. Great. Who else do we have out there?
You mentioned your daughter, but I would ask another research question. But as someone who was once an 11-year-old girl, I kind of want to ask: did you like ask 11-year-old girls how they felt about things, or talk to child psychologists, or was it more of sort of a general about emotions?
We did both. Yeah. The 11-year-old girls were not very articulate about how they felt. But the psychologists were really helpful because that's, you know, most of them make a living. And we talked to a couple guys who really specify in working with adolescents. And that was really intriguing. One of the things we learned was that no one on earth is more socially attuned and aware than an 11 to 17-year-old girl. That's like the height of being able to read social cues and interpret facial expressions and little nuanced gestures, which kind of explains a lot.
Yeah, it does.
And I think there's probably no one less socially aware than an 11 to 17-year-old boy. So.
But one of the things we did, though, is because we realized, as even though the idea came from such a great source, but you know, you realize with me and you and Josh and Ryan, it's like, yeah, it's a bunch of 41-year-old dudes in a room trying to figure out. And so we leaned on so many of the smart women at Pixar. I mean, we brought on this writer, Meg LaFove, who helped us really put it, I think, in a place of authenticity. One of our directing animators, Jamie Rowe, over half our story artists were women. And we would just say, we're going to get out of the room and let them just riff on things and come up with ideas. I remember Valerie, I thought that was interesting.
Well, and you also set up lunches with a bunch of people, and so we would talk about, like, what do you remember about junior high growing up? And we talked a lot, and tried to internalize all that as much as we can. I don't know, for me, I felt like that was a really difficult time in my life, so I could definitely identify and relate to a lot of what was going on. Yeah, Val was one of the story artists, and she just went off by herself for a little while and drew all these little illustrations of her and her friend playing, and you know, being made fun of for having dolls, and like all these really relevant things of like what it is to still be a kid but not really allowed to be a kid.
Yeah, and that became really something that the men and the women, everybody, so like really, I don't know, we found that we all had something in common, which was, and I bet you this echoes true in this room, whether it tends to be when you're making stuff and you're around creative people. I don't know, I can't speak for this room, I guess, but what we all found was, man, we all somehow had the story where we missed our social cues. Like I was playing with my Star Wars toys, maybe one summer too long, you know what I mean? And got teased for that. And you know, you had a similar story. We all had a story like that, and that was kind of one of the core ingredients of this. Is like, and I probably did that because Joy was driving, and maybe she should have let go, or whatever it was. But it was all about, even that aspect was about the research and making it authentic.
Yeah. I will say too, the main character of the film, whether it's evident here or not, is Joy. And really that came from us being parents and watching and caring for our kids. And you know, the course of the story, Joy kind of learns what it is to have a kid who grows up, which I did as well. So.
All right, good question. Raise your hand when you get the mic so we can see you. There we go.
Aha.
Hi, I'm more interested in the animation process.
Cool.
So,
How much time do we have?
okay, so I'm going into like animation myself, more like character animation. So, is it more important for animators at your studio to at least know like how to emote a character, or like the different body positions of an emotion? What I'm trying to say is like, even if a person doesn't know how to draw that well, is it more important for you in the 3D space for someone to know how to make the character not only function but like show expression, or do you need to both be a great drawer and be a great animator at the same time in your perspective?
I'd say the acting is like 90% of, I mean, you know, obviously there's a great deal of technique that's involved, like how to make things move fluidly, overlapping action, follow through, you know, squash and stretch, all the sort of basics that you guys are probably know we're learning anyway. But a lot of what we ask for and the way we talk to the animators, the way I talk to them is the same as I talk to actors. So I will say, you know, remember, have you ever gotten home and, let me back up. Instead of, early in my career, I would say, okay, let's see if we can get the character to move over here and grab this thing, and at about frame 47, they moved like this, and it was very external. And I found it was much more useful for me to speak internally. So I'll say maybe like, you know that feeling like you get home, and it's late at night, you close the door, and you're taking your shoes off, and you hear a clunk from upstairs, and the hair on the back of your neck stands up, and that's what I need from this scene. I need that sense of anxiety and fear. And got it. The animator will then go off and interpret that in any number of ways. More likely, way better than I would have told them to do, because that's their job, right? So really what I'm looking for in an animator is acting ability. Some of them draw really well, some of them don't really draw much at all, but all of them are great actors.
Yeah, they really are an extension of the cast.
Yeah. Because we're talking about it, we have the slides of this. We'll show you. We have this is a sequence of or a little bit of animation which shows some really cool stuff that, you know, a lot of us grew up with Chuck Jones, Tex Avery, etc. Let me show you this slowed down. These guys were able to stretch, distort limbs, you know, do these great sort of swoopy gestures with this stuff, and that was in large part because we did on the show have this great guy, Tony Baxter. Oh, sorry, Tony Facilli. This is the drawn version of the same thing, which is, in this case, the animator came from in Toronto, Canada.
Sheridan.
That's it. So, studied hand-drawn animation. And then did the posing of the characters. Tony Facilli is a great animator. He worked on ton of stuff, but
Iron Giants.
that's what I'm thinking.
He worked on Aladdin. He worked on a lot of the Disney stuff.
Yeah, and so he would sit and draw over stuff. So we might have a pose like this, and he would draw over it. And without the constraints of the model, he was free to just express that emotion more broadly and more directly. You know, here's another example from later. Dad's grabbed Mom and Riley, and so he kind of redrew that with a little more slope and more attitude, and just really great stuff. Here's Riley throwing her helmet down in anger, and he drew over that. You know, again, just really great gestures that strengthen what we're doing. And then the animators would use these drawings to go back to their three-dimensional models and repose them, which worked out really well. Here's even the background mind characters, you know, giving them a little more attitude and sass.
A little hard, yeah.
Yeah, so I can show you this quick too.
Oh yeah, this is right.
This is a new tool that we developed that allows you to really emphasize gestures. So you have these lines of action, which in hand-drawn just comes naturally. But for us, you're kind of limited usually by the model. So you bend at the waist and you have this kind of kink in there, right? In this case, we wanted to swoop. So the animator can then draw in there and really conform that shape so that you get much stronger poses. Here's another example of it. That's the initial pose up there, and then we go through and emphasize certain things to just get a stronger pose. So it's all really cool stuff. All right, back to questions.
Hi, so when you are developing characters and stories and whatnot, how do you guys at Pixar tackle issues of like, obviously these are kind of people in a sense. How do you tackle issues of like class privilege and white privilege and sex and like have you ever seen like transgender folk or anything like that? Like, what goes on at Pixar when you think about these issues, and what do your like there's people in marketing and all sorts of business that goes on. We don't want to see things that isn't going to sell. And
Right.
blah blah blah. Tell us more about that.
So are you talking about within the film or like the crew, like working together?
Within the film.
Okay. Okay.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think Pixar's an amazingly diverse place, right, of artists. And so, and what's cool about that is, and where we are, maybe it's just being in Northern California. I mean, you'll see every kind of person, everybody is welcome at Pixar. I think it's in a way because of that, we honestly don't sit and try to intentionally tackle anything like that. I mean, we try to make movies that come from observation, that come from just growing up and observing life and being true. And really the only kind of rule that we have is, and John Lasseter says, you just make something you would want to go see, make something you'd be proud of. And so, I don't know, in terms of diversity and gender and all that, it's just, I don't know, it just seeps in. It's all who we are. I mean, it's everybody there works together. And I like to think that our movies are just sort of a reflection of the culture of being open at Pixar. I don't know.
Yeah, here's something I noticed that kind of goes along with that. I think most of us grew up sort of social outcasts to some degree. Like we were outside of there were the cool kids, and then there were us kind of standing off to the side, picking our nose and drawing, you know? And so a lot of the stories that we end up telling are about the outsider kind of finding their way, kind of finding their tribe, because that's what happened to us at Pixar. You know, we got there and finally found a community that of like-minded people. So,
I mean, marketing and so forth, and the business side of it almost never creeps in. Obviously, it's a business. We're trying to make motion pictures that allow us to keep making motion pictures. But no one ever really comes to us with any sort of any mandates or anything to avoid. I mean, listen, we pitched the movie up and to the Walt Disney Company, and you can imagine I was thinking it's like my first movie I'm producing. How is this gonna? This is animated movie for the
an
people.
old man sees his wife dies, and he floats his house to South America. See,
suicide mission where he wants to die.
Yeah.
And, but don't worry, whatever.
It's really funny talking
So we've never, I guess, felt any push on them.
Yeah. No, I think really John is great. Lasseter will say, "I want to see you on the screen." So as a director, he's always wanting to get as much of us as he can on the screen to make it a little more personal. And So anyway.
I don't know.
Hi,
Yeah.
I'm in animation too, but my question is kind of involves like the entire spectrum, you know, like the high level production, like what you do, so that covers like the whole film to like low level, like someone who just models a character.
Right.
Is obviously Pixar does a lot of movies over in a short period of time. Like you're doing 2 movies this year, you did like a movie like just 2 years back, and you're turning out movies like every other year. Do you work on more than one movie at a time, or do you just try to stay focused on just one story at a time, just to keep your imagination focused on one thing?
That's a great question. I mean, we primarily work on one movie at a time, and there's multiple crews. But Pete, you know, to speak for you, he's one of the senior creative directors, and so we have this sort of brain trust. So you kind of work on all of them. I mean, you'll jump in and do screenings and brain trust that are off-sites and every single movie every few weeks. So since you kind of oversee all of it,
Yeah.
but you're focused on it.
Yeah, you get heavy duty on one, and then you kind of help out in other ones. Things like that.
Yeah, I mean, the place is built that way. I mean, I'm the VP of production as well as a producer, so I'm helping every producer and build every team, but I work on inside out, and so it's a little bit of both.
Hello. Hey, I'm Dennis at ABC4. We're wondering, could you tell us what your motivation for coming back to the U was and what you hope the audience takes away from this?
Motivation for coming here. We're excited about the film, and we're excited to talk to you guys, because I feel like, I do this all the time. I say, bye to my wife, bye hon, I'm going to school, I mean work. I feel like I'm still at school, and I really feel empathetic with what you guys are going through. So it's exciting for us to come here and talk.
We get to, listen, we work on the movie for 5 years, we're holed up at Pixar, and you know, it's a secret, we can't show anybody anything. And so when we're done, I mean, it's really actually exciting to be able to come out, especially before it comes out, because we're so excited about it, to be able to share a little bit about it. And to be honest, I mean, we go on these press tours, we go and we meet various people from the press and help promote the film, and that's part of our job. And so what we like to do to counter that, because that's sort of the business side, is come to schools and film schools and animation schools to just talk about the process. And for us, it's like a break and a little step back into why we do this.
Yeah.
You know, to be honest.
Yeah.
Is it hard to choose the voices for each character?
It can be.
It is.
It can be. Some of them were easier. Like on this one, Lewis Black, who my son had introduced me to on the Daily Show, I thought, oh, that's like, I would use him as an example of, the kind of fun we can have with the casting. But other ones were more difficult, and Joy was probably the most difficult, mainly because we couldn't figure out who she was as a character. Most people that I know that are just happy all the time, I kind of want to punch them in the face. Because they're not being genuine. And we needed some way to make Joy feel genuine in her job, in her passion, her love for her kid. And Amy, we talked to her about that. We were very upfront about where we'd been struggling. And she said, I think I can help you. She said, I can get away with saying stuff that most people can't. And it was really true. Somehow the miracle of just personalities, and so she was really very self-aware of where that character needed to go. So that was both difficult to find and then also just to write.
I don't want to see you on the front page of the school paper, Pete Doctor punches nice people in the face.
Hey, if that's what's needed. That's right.
Who's got the microphone? Oh, right here, okay.
Hi, I had a small question about characterization. I could tell that Riley's emotions were this merger between her mother and her father. And when looking at her dad's emotions, they seem to be mostly male or masculine, and her mom is mostly female. What is the inside like for people just in this universe in general?
That's a great question. Well, we talked, in our mind, this is what all of our emotions look like, right? We've defined them as that's anger, that's joy. We all have a kind of a version of that. The truth is about that scene, the dinner table scene where you cut it and we sort of break that one, there's sort of variants of it. We actually tried a version of that scene where we kept it consistent, right? We kept it mixed. And then we realized we cut it, oh my gosh, we've got 18 characters here, and we've got 4 sets, including the kitchen, and it just wasn't reading, it wasn't funny, like the humor was kind of eroded out of it. So we thought, yeah, we have to make this entertaining. So we thought about like if this was SNL, and they were doing this scene, what they do is they would get cheap props, and everyone, like mom's supposed to wear glasses, everyone got it, so it would read. So it really was this shorthand of just making it funny. But we get that question because I guess we've justified it since then. Like, well, maybe as you grow older, you sort of calcify into who you are. When you're younger, you're a little more mixed and open to things. And so, but that's kind of after the fact.
Yeah.
Basically, it was a shortcut for gags.
So you said that you started out as an intern at Pixar, and I was just wondering if there are any tips for potential future interns you have in applying and just kind of throwing yourself out there into the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky, as I said, I kind of grew up there and had this unbelievable experience. It was a real small place when I applied. So small, as I said, there wasn't an internship program. I guess my advice is, what I did, what I noticed at film school, this is San Francisco State, was that there were a lot of people, everybody was reaching really high, which is cool, you should, everyone should do that. But I found like this pocket where I thought there was people and some of the students I was with that were almost disappointed at anything that was not high enough. So there was a hesitancy. So I seized that. I remember thinking like, man, I'm gonna do whatever I have to do. I don't care if I'm sweeping up, and of course I ended up at Pixar literally sweeping the floors. And so I don't know, that sounds corny, and I don't mean it to, but the truth is, it's work. And when I got my foot in that door, I just remember thinking to myself, I'm gonna work so hard as an intern that when my time is up, they're gonna be freaking out more than I am because they're gonna not know what to do because I'm covering so much. You know what I mean? So I tried to quadruple whatever I could get my hands on or get near. And I guess the other side of that is, I dreamed of working at Pixar, or working at Disney. You know, I wanted to go, I remember, I was just coming into college, Little Mermaid came out. And it was one of the few movies that I went and saw and paid for like twice in the same day. It just blew my mind. It just felt like an echo of the old days, and I wanted to do that. By the way, the other movie I did that was Pulp Fiction. And I thought, man, if you could put those two movies in a blender. But my point is that Disney was my dream and my target, but then I realized I had no idea that Pixar was even connected to Disney when I went there. And I realized I'm so glad I actually didn't try to go into Disney because I got so much more opportunity in a smaller startup place. So I guess my other advice for any interns out there looking for things, don't be ashamed to aim, this sounds terrible, but to aim lower than what you think the perfect place is, because I guarantee there's a place now that's going to be 10 times cooler than Pixar, that's younger and smarter and quicker than we are. And that's kind of where you want to bet that Pixar's not great, it is, but I promise you, there's always something that's lower than you think. If that makes sense.
Cool. Feeling time for maybe 2-3 more.
Sure.
Okay, so my question is actually, I'm right over here.
Thank you.
Okay, so my question is actually kind of similar. I was curious where you guys get your screenwriters, because there's obviously like a lot of you. There's not just like one person who's writing the script.
Right.
And then the other thing that I was curious about is if you were an aspiring like screenwriter, if like writing the story is your favorite part of what you want to do with film. How do you get there? How do you find yourself? Maybe not just at Pixar, not just at Disney, but at a place where you can do animated films like this, but you're the story guy. You're not necessarily the drawing guy.
That's always a difficult question for us because at Pixar we don't really have staff writers. We will hire, like Michael Arndt came on for a year and then he's on to something else. I'd say the number one thing to do is practice. And I also sort of equate it to like, you would never hand a kid a violin and say, see you at Carnegie Hall tonight. It's like you need to practice. It's going to take years and years before you're good enough. And I think screenwriting is the same way. There is this weird thing of like, I'm making a movie and this first one I've ever done is going to be a masterpiece. And then it's like, the chances of that are not high. So the more you do it, the better you're going to get, and the more you're going to learn. And of course, like anything, the more you study other films and really break it down. I always feel like there's this whole thing I call story math, which is, you know, you read a lot about in books, of like your inciting incident and your act 2 reversal and all these things. I think that's good stuff to know as much as you can and then forget about. So that when you're writing, it's just coming from an internal gut place. But all that stuff's back there. It's kind of working for you in your lizard brain. And I think all that, the only reason that will work is if you do it enough to really train yourself. You can't just be like, I read a book, I'm done. You know, it's like, it really takes months and years of work.
And Michael Arndt, I mean, it sort of echoes what I just said. Michael Arndt, wasn't he like an assistant? Who, Matthew Broderick's assistant or something?
He read scripts
for
years.
So he's similar, like he wanted to be a writer. He ended up just being around movies. He was an assistant to an actor, and then he got into a development department as an assistant to some executive and just read scripts. So he always told me, like, I just wanted to be around, I didn't care if they were commercials or just around people that were making something. And then he educated himself on all the scripts that he was reading, and now he's one of the great writers, you know. So just, again, just getting in and being around it and learning what you like and what you don't, and as Pete says, just doing it, whether you sell it or not, or if it never gets made, but do it.
Jonas, I'm going to pass this to my friend here who will ask your last question.
Okay.
But before I do, our producer in residence, we have a producer in residence on our faculty, he happens to run the internship program.
Fantastic.
I think maybe an email introduction.
Yes, sir. Yes, of course.
Hi. I saw a sequence or a clip or whatever of a cut sequence from the film Up, showing the backstory of the. I'm not too much into animation, so I can't remember the characters' names, but it was the old guy and when they were young.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was really cool because you had this cut sequence where they like punched each other all the time.
Right.
And I
See?
yeah, but obviously, you know, that wouldn't fly with like a kid's show because then like I get that part. But has there ever been?
That's actually not why we cut it. But go ahead.
Oh, okay. Good. But I've always wondered, like, has there been anything like artistically, like in the embryonic stage of like say this film or anything where you always got pushback on it and you just like stuck with your artistic integrity. And then I was also wondering about like, I hear like voice acting is way hard to get in. You just guys have celebrities pounding down your door for every movie you do?
I don't know if they're pounding down the door, but they do seem willing. I mean, we get people like Diane Lane plays Riley's mom. And we were sure, like, oh, Diane Lane's not going to want to do this. It's not a huge part, but she was so honored to be part of it. So I don't know. There's some goodwill with Pixar on that, but you should talk about that scene because it was a good example.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this: almost everything that I've worked on that I end up feeling very strongly about, and that almost every film that I worked on that people compliment us on a specific thing are the very same things I got fought on. So, for example, Monsters, Inc., the ending of that, we showed it to an audience, and people, the word came back, we want to see what happens when Boo and Sully get back together. You guys should show, who wants to see that? And everybody raised their hand. We're like, okay.
Do you guys remember how that ended?
Yeah. So, I'm back at Applied meeting, and, you know, Sully pokes in, and you just hear the voice. Same with, on Up. We had the married life sequence that you were talking about. The edited down version, which ended up in the film, there's that moment where they can't have kids. And we got a couple people saying that's too far, that kind of is, you know, too emotional. And so we said, all right, let's try it. We cut it out. And not only did you not feel that sequence as much, you didn't feel the movie as much. And I think it was really because of that. The darkness of life and the bad things that happen are crucial to feeling for those characters. So almost, and this film too, and I won't get into that because you know, you haven't seen it yet, but almost everything that ends up really mattering, for whatever reason, you end up having to fight for at some point. And some of them I've fought for and have been wrong about too. So I'm not always right. But you do have to, that's part of the discipline of being in a creative environment with a lot of people. You have this amazing, almost embarrassment of riches, of intelligent people and amazing artists. But you also have a lot of conflict and conversation. And, you know, conversation is the nice way of saying it. Sometimes there's fights. But that's all good. As long as everybody's focused on the work and it's not about me and I want my idea to win, you know, sometimes that's not very often the case at Pixar. Really.
No, it's not. But you're poking at, and your question's led to this. It's really, I think, the core ingredient of why we do what we do. You showed a slide of a guy named Joe Grant, who became the mentor to Pete and I by proxy got to meet Joe. Joe was this old-timer, amazing gentleman who had worked, Walt Disney hired him in the 30s. He wrote Dumbo. And he was just this amazing, just knowledgeable, he died drawing, literally in his drawing. And we dedicated that to him, among a few others.
He actually came up with the title Monsters, Inc.
That's right. He used to fax things. He
Yeah.
was a great believer. Anyway, Joe was an amazing guy. And one of the things he taught us, I suppose, was just this lesson of like, listen, you entertain, movies are entertaining and you have to have comedy and entertainment value and so forth, but you really want to give the audience something to take home with them. Like, why are you making this, right? What's the deeper question? And
what's going to cause them to think about this tomorrow or the next week or the next year, you know?
Right, and that was just an amazing way to put it. Like, and then we thought, like, all the movies we love, like, I still have Bambi in my head. I still think about it. Not a day goes by that I don't think about that or other films that I love. And so why is that? It's usually because there's some sort of emotional core to it or some bigger reason that they were just funny or had great action. And so, but when you're doing that, sometimes you get a little close to the, I don't know, to some sensitive things from time to time. I guess that's what makes it tick though, you know. I mean, by the way, some of these notes about the thing, and weren't just from executives, they were for people on our crew.
Yeah.
You know, and I had a friend of mine say, oh man, that was too far. Yeah, so you know, none of those are intent to bum people out, but it is a story, and it matters to us, and at the end of the day, we're just trying to honor the fact that we have this shot to do it, and listen to old Joe in our head, and make it count.
So now it's your guys' turn. You're all in school, you're here making movies, whatever you're doing, give us something to take home.
Yeah.
And we hope to see that on the screen sometime soon.
Exactly that.